This has been a joint development with Microsoft and Profisee, so we're very pleased to have on the call here Gaurav Malhotra, Principal Program Manager for the Azure product, the Azure Purview product in Microsoft. He'll be telling us about Purview and showing us a little bit of that product. We also have Eric Melcher, the Chief Technology Officer of Profisee, who's obviously going to do the same thing for Profisee, and then he's going to show us with live software the integration between Purview and Profisee. Speaking now, I'm Martin Boyd, VP Product Marketing of Profisee, and I'll be doing a little bit of emceeing and a little bit of setting the context of the presentation here. So what we're going to be talking about is how Purview and Profisee MDM are better together. We'll start by talking about Purview, which was released to public preview in December as a platform for unified data governance. The product Purview does a lot of different things that Gaurav will talk about. The main thing for our purposes here are that it does automatic scanning and classification of data sources from your enterprise. Can start to indicate what data sources you have, what you can use, the lineage, all of that kind of thing. But also it's the place to start to set data standards about what the data should look like. What would good quality data look like that you can use in your business? So that's obviously governance. What Profisee does with master data management at its core is match and merge many of those multiple data sources, and particularly the master data from those data sources, and the master data being the commonly used data across multiple sources that may have discrepancies, gaps, etc., that need to be fixed if you're going to use the data as a foundation for managing your business. So not only does master data management match and merge data sources, but then it starts to enforce data standards, the data standards that were set in Purview. And that's really the nature of the integration between these products. And that's what we're going to be talking about here today. So we're going to talk through what does each product do, why should they work together, why is it important that there's that these things both exist and that they work in tandem, and then how do they work together using the integration that we've developed. So that's really our agenda for today. So before we get into all of that, like I said, this has been a joint development that's been non-trivial, and it's lasted over quite some period, really inspired a lot by Mike Flasco, the Partner Director of Product Management for Microsoft, who's quoted here, who also happens to be Gaurav's boss. And the way he puts it, as companies transition their data estate to Azure, they need improved visibility and governance of their data assets. Azure Purview helps organizations catalog, classify, and govern the broad data estate. With Profisee MDM, master data can be matched, merged, and of data quality enforced across the data sources. And most importantly, this combination forms a foundation for data governance that maximizes the business value of data. So I think that's really the proper context to think about all of this as we dive into what each product does and how they work together. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Gaurav Malhotra, who will talk a little bit about Purview.
Thank you, Martin. So as we talk more about the guts of what we are doing with the MDM integration and Profisee, it will be good to first learn what Purview is for the first few minutes. And before I dive into what Purview is, I just want to set some context that, as you guys are aware, that the volume, variety, and velocity of data keeps on increasing. So these are some of the numbers that we have from IDC, which tells that by 2025, there will be 175 zettabytes of data, right? So you can imagine almost every application, every device throwing gigabytes, petabytes of data, and it continues to increase. So as we have worked with different organizations, what we have seen with respect to data governance is emergence of this role called Chief Data Officer. And there are two ends of the spectrum that's in play over here. Starting from data discovery, where organizations are looking to centralize what exists in their organization, right? So that they have a single pane of glass to discover what assets they have. They know what data exists, where did it originate, can they trust that data? all the way on the other end of the spectrum to compliance, to understand the risk profile of the data, to understand whether the data is compliant to governance standards, and those could be different regulations like GDPR, CCPA. So we are seeing this emergence increasingly in organizations, and where this chief data officer role is becoming interdisciplinary. Okay? So as we learn more about data governance, again, working with our customers, with our partners, we have seen 4 key aspects for a successful data governance solution. The first the first key part is to be able to understand where data exists, right? So as I mentioned, data is all over the place. So to be able to manage that growing data landscape is a key aspect. The second one is that companies are increasingly looking to overcome operational silos. So earlier, you would have a finance business unit, a marketing business unit, have their own data lakes, have data sets that are duplicated across those data lakes. But increasingly, organizations are getting away from that and wanting to create that central view so that there is no data sprawl. They don't have to maintain bespoke solutions. And once you do that, it automatically increases the agility of data and allows you to gain intelligent insights into the data. And then, as I mentioned, on the other end of the spectrum, you would want to comply with these different industry regulations that keep on popping up, starting with CCPA, GDPR, and a bunch of others that we see across different organizations in different continents. So with that, what we have done, as Martin mentioned, back in December, our CEO announced Azure Purview, which allows customers to maximize the business value of data. And there are 3 core areas that we are focusing here from get-go. The first one is it's a unified service. So you are not maintaining different Purview accounts. The guidance here is to have a single unified Purview account for your organization. The second one is from get-go, we are embracing the hybrid nature of data. So we understand that data is an on-prem, multi-cloud, SaaS sources, operational sources. So we are embracing that hybrid nature. And finally, it's open. So you'll see that Azure Purview conforms to Apache Atlas standards, which is a great extensibility point, from a customer standpoint, because not only you can use types that are supported in the system, but it opens you to define custom types, push information into what we call as a Purview data map, and make it an extensible solution, governance solution for your organization. And that's also where you will see how we have worked with Profisee to integrate with Purview data map and come up with this solution. So what is Azure Purview in a nutshell, right? So the way to see it, I'll start from the bottom of this picture on the right-hand side, where, as I mentioned, that you have sources all over the place, on-prem, multi-cloud SaaS sources, and we have scanners that are going out to scan these sources and build what we call as the Purview data map. Now, think of this data map as a graph where we are capturing key pieces of information, including technical metadata. So what is the column name? What is the descriptions? So your entire schema of the data. We are capturing semantic metadata to say, oh, this column is a social security number, or this column is an Australia tax file number. And we support 200 plus out of the box system classifiers. And customers can bring their own classifiers as well, where they can specify their own data dictionaries or represent those as regular expressions. And then finally, we also allow customers to stamp business context onto assets in the map, so that when they use this data catalog application on top of this data map, they can use that business context to browse and search information into the map, because a lot of our users are business users. In addition to that, the data catalog application could service your data scientists, your data analysts, data producers, data consumers, stewards. We have these data insights where we are targeting the data officer, so the office of chief data officer, where you want to understand how your data is distributed across your data estate, right? So you want to understand the risk profile of data from a compliance standpoint. So we enable these data insights out of the box that customers can use and understand all of that. So in a nutshell, we have 30 plus sources and file formats that are live. The Purview data map is available. The data catalog application on top is available for customers to browse and search information in the map, define a business glossary, stamp business assets, and then from a chief data officer, you can gain these insights into your data estate. So I'm going to jump to a very quick demonstration of what Purview is before handing it over to Martin and Eric to talk specifically about the MDM integration. So let me start my screen. Share. So I hope everyone can see my screen. So just like every Azure service, this is a standard Azure service. It's available in Azure portal and you can provision. I'll not go through the provisioning experience. Once you provision, you get a blade like this. You can click Open Purview Studio, and that's where it opens the Azure Purview Studio and lands onto the home page, where you can see that I've already cataloged millions of assets across a bunch of sources. Some of those are petabyte-sized lakes. I've defined my business terms. I can search my data estate. I'll come back to this in a minute. I'm a super admin here, so you can see that I can pretty much do everything from connecting to sources to setting up scans to be able to browse, manage my business terms. But this is totally dependent on the role that you have in the organization. If you just are a reader or a curator, you can only browse assets or edit those assets, but not connect to sources. So totally dependent on the role. Some recently accessed items and quick links for you to get started. So let me very quickly show you how easy it is to populate your data map. So we have this sources section on the left, where once you click that, you can see that I've organized my data map by data centers. And we have this concept called collections. And here, like I said, I organize those by data centers, but you can organize it any way you want in your organization. And you can have collections inside the collection, and there are sources inside those collections as well. So in terms of data sources, we support pretty much everything in Azure. We are starting our multi-cloud journey with Amazon S3, and we do support on-prem sources like Oracle, ERP sources like SAP, ECC, HANA, Teradata, SQL Server, and from a presentation layer perspective, Power BI. Now, we are on a very aggressive journey to double and triple these connectors in the upcoming iterations. We already have industry-leading partnerships, which gives us 200 plus connectors, and we are just working to light those up in our stack. So setting up a scan is super easy. Once you register these sources, you can essentially just come here and just set up those scans quickly by diving into a particular source and just clicking new scan and running through that process. They're fully integrated with keywords, so no credentials get stored. You can do test connections. You can scope your scans to say I only want to scan a portion of the lake, what type of files you want to scan. So all of that is supported today in the system. Right? So as I mentioned, you can scope your scans over here. You can essentially come in and say that as part of this scan, I want to enable this scan rule set. And all that scan rule set is saying is that I want to scan all these file types and enable all these classifications. As I mentioned, we have 200 plus in the system across different domains like government, financial, personal, and so forth. And you can enable custom classifications as well. And then you just specify how often you want to scan to run, and boom. So it's a truly serverless infrastructure where you just come, set up your connection, set up your scans. We spin up the infrastructure, we scale it up and down to give you the best-in-class performance. One additional thing I do want to mention is, based on the feedback that we got from customers, we are enabling capabilities where you can scan well-defined hierarchies like Azure, AWS, and we're working to do the same for Google as well, where instead of scanning source by source, you can just scan a subscription, and we will do the heavy lifting of determining what are the storage accounts, what are the Cosmos DBs, what are the SQL servers in that subscription, and automatically bring that under the governance umbrella of Purview. So it's a very important capability and very useful for our customers. Now, in terms of business glossary, we have this business glossary where you can define your business glossary. It supports hierarchical business glossary as well. So as you can see, I have a hierarchy here. In a particular business term, you can see its definition, some operational metadata, the assets it is stamped onto the catalog, You can see its synonyms. As I mentioned, there's a hierarchy here. Who are the experts and stewards for this? Now, coming back to, again, the home page and showcasing a little bit about this, the search capability. So you can just type business terms here or technical terms, and we give you suggestions. And once you hit enter, you can further scope it down by different areas like asset types, classification, contacts, or business terms. And here, you can then dive deeper into a particular term. So I just filtered by a business term, and you can look at the classifications, the basic and advanced properties, the entire schema of that particular data set, from column name to types to classifications, the lineage view, which is super important in terms of what this table is being fed into which process. It's a data factory process in generating a Synapse Analytics account. So to be able to see starting from the raw data to your presentation layer is one of the key use cases. And then you can look at your contacts and browse your assets in a hierarchical manner as well. Very quickly jumping into the insights part. So from a data officer standpoint, you're able to see how your data is distributed across your data estate. You can look at your scans, your business terms. You can look at from a compliance standpoint, how the sensitive data is distributed in your data estate. So all of those high-level insights are provided to customers as well. So this was a very quick sneak peek of the product that I wanted to show you guys what is available, and it lays the foundation of effective data governance for us to enable other pieces that we're working in future around data quality, around data policies, around privacy and all of that. So back to you, Martin.
Excellent. Thank you, Gaurav. So I think everyone can probably see from that, even that brief introduction, why Purview is something that people are very interested in, because the very first step of managing your data as an asset would be to figure out what data you have, where's it coming from, what are all the different sources, etc. So the second step would be to make sure that the data that you're looking at is high quality and trusted, which is where master data management comes in. And let me just talk a little bit about that and set the context for that before I hand off to Eric, who will dive into that in a little bit more detail. So if you're thinking about moving your data to Azure or doing some kind of data intensive project in Azure, the first step, as Gaurav just said, is to make sure that you know where the data is and start to get access to it. And that could be from multiple ERP systems, CRM, inventory systems, whatever it is that you happen to have, and depending on what your use case is. But nearly always what you find when you start looking at all that data together is the data is of, let's say, poor quality. It could be, not quite right, or it could be absolutely terrible, depending on your situation, depending on history. More than likely, the data that you've got may have been fine in the system that it's in right now, but when we pull it together and look at it all in one place, we discover it is way more inconsistent than we thought it would be. So the quality is generally not that great, most likely. When we look at the data across systems, we find that it is missing and incomplete, missing values and incomplete records. And when we compare the data that maybe for the same customer or the same product from different sources, we probably find that the data is duplicated and conflicting. So we have, just the raw data brought in, we find that there are issues. But what we really need to be looking at is high quality trusted data that is complete and consistent and accurate, so that all the downstream consumers of that data, whether it's something like machine learning or BI and analytics or any operational system that we might have that we're trying to use and improve by giving it good quality data, they need this high quality trusted data to start with. So we have a gap between the relatively poor input data and the high quality trusted data that we need to be delivering. So how do we fill that gap? So that is the same two products that we're talking about here. Purview, to find and classify, catalog that data and start to define common data standards. And then, as we were saying, MDM, to start to enforce those standards, to match and merge the different sources, to validate them and ensure that the data is conforming to the standards that have been set out, and to remediate, meaning flag any issues and correct them, either through human interaction or human assisted interaction or through an automated workflow. And then importantly, optionally, to synchronize that data across multiple systems, not just make the data available to the downstream consumers, but in some situations, in many situations, actually, now that you've got higher quality, more useful data, you want to sync it back to some of the source systems and make sure that they also have access to that data. So that's what this is the combination of the two products, and that's why each one of these products is, has a valid and important role independently, but together they really form the platform of the high quality trusted data that is going to maximize the business value of data. So having set that context, let me hand off to Eric, who's going to dive a little bit more into the MDM area. Over to you, Eric.
Great, thanks, Martin. So our focus on today's call obviously is centered around Purview and our integration with Purview. But we did want to take a moment just to mention kind of the broader capabilities of our platform. So, as an MDM platform, we have all the typical capabilities that you would expect to see to solve the common challenges that we see within the master data management space. And I think a couple of things that are important for you to be aware of is, so a couple of things that are important for you to be aware of is that whereas a lot of other vendors in our particular market have been evolving towards having multi-domain capabilities, our focus as a company from day one has always been on delivering multi-domain MDM. And so when you look across our customers, you'll see broad adoption, not just with their first domain, but implementing additional domains over time. And as you look at the Gartner Magic Quadrant, you'll see in the commentary within that, you'll see them alluding to that Profisee tends to have customers deploying the most domains to production and deploying those domains to production most quickly. So as we get to the end of the slide, to the presentation, we'll share a little more information and some links to some resources if you're interested in learning more about Profisee and our broader MDM capabilities. But for now, we want to focus in on primarily our integration with Purview. So as we dig in here, what we'd like to do is first set the stage for why we think this integration and the approach that we've taken is the best option for customers out there in the market. Starting with Purview, Purview's goal is to provide broad data governance across the entirety of your data estate, a lot of things that Gaurav was alluding to momentarily ago. And what we see from a number of other vendors in the MDM space is that oftentimes they're adding what we would consider lightweight data governance capabilities within their MDM platforms. And the challenge is that those capabilities are typically kind of narrowly focused on the scope of master data. And if you think of the goal of governance as being able to kind of see and search across everything, creating what we would consider a governance silo inside of your MDM solution runs counter to a lot of the objectives of a broader data governance program. So what we're excited about here with Purview is Purview will provide that broad view of data across the enterprise in a single place to perform governance in a very consistent way across your organization. And then from a data management perspective, we believe that data governance solutions and data management solutions should have a very unique relationship between each other. So whereas Purview can go out and classify and scan and kind of consume data from a lot of your other data applications, master data management is a little bit unique. Now, these are two key pillars in most enterprise data architectures. So whereas Purview's classifying and cataloging and creating, identifying all your data assets, Profisee MDM is focused on the actual management of your master data. And having these two things work together is a much better approach and leads to a much better outcome for organizations. So the way we've delivered this integration, there's two components of it. The first one is our ability to publish a master data model and all the other assets defined within Profisee natively into Purview. And so the goal here is to allow Profisee to participate in governance alongside all the other data assets across your broader enterprise. So with Profisee, you simply tell us where Purview is, and then we'll take it from there. And as you evolve and define and configure your master data solution, all those will show up as data assets natively within Purview as first-class citizens, where they can participate in broader governance alongside the rest of your data assets from across your enterprise. Now, as governance occurs within Purview, those assets get enriched with additional information. So for example, assets from Profisee could be associated with a glossary term, or they could be classified, or a richer business description could be defined. And that information has value not just in Purview, but also to data stewards back within the Profisee platform. So what we've done is now we're consuming that information back within Profisee and making it available appropriately to data stewards in line with the interface they use for managing data within Profisee. So what I'd like to do now is actually take a moment to show you what this integration actually looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. So here we are in Profisee, and this is a sample demo of customer data. And I'd just like to take a moment to orient you here. So obviously, I've got a customer domain or customer table that's been defined here. So we're managing, in this case, customer data. And then a customer is defined in this solution as having a number of different attributes that further describe that customer. So here you can see name, address information, et cetera. And if I open up an individual customer, we can see additional information and details that we've modeled within Profisee and are ultimately managing. And all of these represent assets that we would like to then publish into Purview and make them available to participate in governance. So if I navigate over here to Purview, so here I am at the Purview home screen, and if we click Browse Assets, what we can see here is that there's a type asset type in here for Profisee. And if we drill into Profisee MDM, you'll see here that we have a number of different types of assets, so entities, kind of tables and attributes, which represent columns, and other types of assets that have all been published here from Profisee via the Atlas API that Gaurav alluded to earlier. And not only have we published these assets into Purview, but we've also performed some governance on them as well. So we've classified some of these assets, associated some contacts, defined some glossary terms, and associated various assets to those glossary terms. And so now whether you're searching assets up here at the top or using some of these filtering capabilities, we can now start to browse the information across our data state, including assets coming from Profisee. So if I click on Social Security number here, we can see that we have both a customer entity as well as an underlying attribute that both have a relationship to that classification. And if we click into the customer asset, we can start to see some of the additional information that we've captured here within Purview. So we have a business user-friendly description. We have a few different classifications that have been associated directly to this entity. We have some other classifications that it's inheriting through its underlying schema. We can look at some properties. So these are consider this more technical metadata that's published here by Profisee. But then we can also see the schema. So this is where we can see all the additional columns or attributes that define a customer, and we can see some of the governance information that's been captured there. We've also been able to associate some contacts, and we can also see a graph of different artifacts here that are related to this particular asset. So all of this information is now natively available within Purview. From a governance perspective, we can edit this information, we can go in and we could perhaps modify the description or add a new classification, et cetera. And all of this information is captured within Purview. So now, with that complete, and Profisee participating in governance, what we can now do is pivot back to Profisee and show how we're exposing that information back to the data steward. So earlier you may have noticed as I was hovering over this header that we have this little icon that pops up here. So when Profisee is configured to integrate with a Purview instance, we automatically detect that and start capturing and displaying governance information in line with the stewardship experience. If I hover over this, I can see the description that was defined here in Purview. And if I click on that icon, I actually get a drill into or pop-up that shows all that additional information. So I can see the broader definition of this entity. I can see a number of different classifications that have been associated with it. I can see my glossary term that defines what is a customer. I can also see information about experts and owners that all have been exposed here through the UI. So that's at the entity level. And if we drill into this, we'll also see here that we had a data quality issue related to tax ID. And here I can see the data quality rule that was defined within Profisee, which is that the length must be equal to 9. But if I want to understand more about the tax ID and what is a tax ID, I have the same experience where I can click into that Purview icon and I can see the attribute, its classification. So I can see here that tax IDs could be either a social security number or an EIN. I can get further details from some glossary terms that have been defined within Purview. Not the same capabilities around experts and owners that helps me understand who could I go have a conversation with or ask some questions of if for some reason I needed to. Now, in addition to this, if for some reason you would like to actually go browse this in Purview, we've actually created a deep link from Profisee back into Purview. So this will take you straight to that underlying asset within Purview, and provided that you have the appropriate rights, you can actually go in here, you could browse further in Purview, leverage some of its inherent capabilities. Perhaps you'd want to edit or amend some of the governance information that's captured here. And again, as those changes that occurred are made in Purview, those will automatically be pulled down and made available back within Profisee. So with that demo complete, I'd like to share a little more about our broader strategy around Azure. So Purview is one of the several products that we're working on developing integrations with a vision towards making Profisee a really natural fit for master data management in conjunction with a lot of these complementary technologies. So a couple other things that we've been working on. The first is actually just making it easy to run Profisee natively in Azure. Someone in the Q&A alluded to earlier kind of some kind of digital transformations that are driven by COVID. One of those that we believe is that the ongoing transition towards software as a service in the cloud. So we've had a lot of focus, and last year we were the first vendor to deliver our platform as a container so that customers can take our platform and deploy it and run it in Azure as a service inside of their tenant subscription. So this gives a lot of the benefits organizations that are looking for in the cloud, easy to turn on, less infrastructure for me to maintain, less software to download and install and configure, et cetera. And our goal here is to continue evolving our capabilities in the cloud with the goal of making it as easy to turn on Profisee in Azure as any of the other services within Azure, native services within Azure, and we've achieved that over this as of last summer. In addition to the work we're doing with Purview, we've also been working heavily with the Azure Data Factory team. We've been doing joint development with them to enable a native experience using Azure Data Factory to integrate data in and out of Profisee. This enables organizations using the ADF to easily integrate Profisee with the broad ecosystem of other data services and applications that Data Factory has native connectors into. And this is something that we're continuing to collaborate on with the Azure Data Factory team. And just like we have plans for additional investments in our Purview integration, we also have plans for additional investments in Azure Data Factory. And then the third component of this ultimately is also some integration capabilities with Synapse. We want to have the same experience, tell us where Synapse is, and integration just happens very similar to Purview. So our integration with Purview, there is a broader strategy on Azure that we're working on. And we did want to share a little bit of information about that because we believe it's relevant. So hopefully that helps you guys understand where we are with the Purview integration, as well as our kind of longer term direction with, in all things Azure. And so with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Martin to share a little more kind of resources and next steps. Martin.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Eric. So hopefully now, everyone on the call, we've been through a discussion of Purview and what it does. We've been through a quick discussion of Profisee and what it does. Obviously not complete, but relevant to this whole conversation. And I think we've talked about why these products should work together to allow data to be managed more as an asset, and how they do actually work together through the sharing of metadata and kind of behind the scenes publishing of information for each different audience.